When you think of a goldfish, what pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's that classic image, right? A little shimmering prize you won at a fair, destined for a simple glass bowl on the kitchen counter. But what if I told you that that entire picture, our whole cultural understanding of a goldfish, is almost completely wrong? Okay, let's just dive right in and unpack this. All right, so I've got a question for you. Just take a second and really think about it. What do you think is a good long life for a pet goldfish? A year? Maybe 3 years? 5 if you're doing a really great job? Whatever number just popped into your head, well, prepare to be surprised. And check this out. The difference a home makes is just staggering. In a typical bowl, you're lucky to get 1 to 3 years, which is what most of us think is normal. But put that same fish in a properly filtered tank, boom, 10 to 15 years. And in an outdoor pond, we're talking 20, 30, even 40 years. The record is actually 49. So that little, short-lived pet is actually one of the longest-living fish you can own, but only if you give it the right environment. So what's the biggest thing standing in the way of that long, healthy life? Well, it usually comes down to this one single myth that we've all heard a million times, that a goldfish will just magically grow to fit the size of its tank. Let's totally dismantle that idea right now. This quote from the SPCA in New Zealand just flips the whole myth on its head. What we've been told is some kind of cool adaptation is actually a sign of poor health. A goldfish that stays small in a small tank isn't fitting its environment, it's being stunted by it. And that leads directly to a much, much shorter life. Let's break this down. The reality is, goldfish are constantly releasing waste and, get this, growth-inhibiting hormones right into their own water. Now, in a big lake or pond, that stuff gets diluted, no problem. But in a tiny, unfiltered bowl, it gets super concentrated. The fish is basically swimming in a toxic soup that literally burns its gills and chemically tells its body to stop growing. And if you need proof, this experiment is just wow. Researchers took 2 groups of goldfish and gave them the exact same amount of physical swimming space. The only difference? One group had 95 liters of water, while the other had a massive 4,500 liters. The result? The fish in the larger volume of water grew to be 4 times heavier. It wasn't about swimming space, it was all about having clean water. Okay, so keeping that experiment in mind, let's really dig into the 3 fatal flaws that make that classic, iconic fishbowl probably the worst possible home you could imagine for a goldfish. First up, bioload. It's a simple idea, really. Goldfish are, well, they're little piggies. They eat a lot, which means they produce a ton of waste. That waste pumps toxins like ammonia into the water. In a tiny bowl with no filter, the water just gets poisonous super fast. Second, oxygen. You know, fish breathe oxygen that's dissolved in the water, right? Well, that oxygen has to get in from the air at the surface. A long, rectangular tank has a nice, big surface. But a bowl, with that tiny little opening, it is literally the worst possible shape. It starves the water and the fish of the oxygen they need to breathe. And third, just look at that number. A healthy common goldfish can grow up to 45 centimeters. That's about 18 inches long. Picture a fish the size of an American football. Now try to picture that fish living in a 1-gallon bowl. It's absurd. They need room just to turn around, let alone live a healthy life. All right, so we've established that bowls are a definite no-go. But what's a yes? Let's talk about the real numbers, the kind of setup your goldfish needs to actually thrive, not just survive. Okay, so here are the ground rules, the absolute minimums. For one of those long-bodied common goldfish, you need to start with at least a 30-gallon tank, which is about 112 liters. For the rounder, slower, fancy goldfish, you can start a bit smaller, say 20 gallons or 75 liters. And then for every other fish you add, you gotta tack on another 10 gallons of space. No exceptions. And listen, those are just the starting points. The real rule of thumb is always, always get the biggest tank you can possibly afford or fit in your space. Why? Well, more water means waste gets diluted, the temperature doesn't swing around like crazy, there's less stress, and, your fish has room to grow into that big, beautiful, chunky pet it's meant to be. You see, this all boils down to a huge shift in how we think about them. A goldfish isn't some disposable prize you win at a carnival. It's not a living decoration. This is a pet that can be with you for decades, and it deserves the exact same care and consideration we'd give to a cat or a dog. And hey, don't just take my word for it. A biologist named Dr. Dieter Jauch, who's an expert on this stuff, puts it Well, he doesn't mince words. He calls keeping the goldfish in a bowl a prison and, straight up, animal abuse. That's a really powerful statement, and it makes you think about how we've let this become so normal for so long. So I want to leave you with this one question to think about. When we give them the right home, a goldfish doesn't just survive for a year or two. It thrives for decades. It grows into this big, smart, interactive pet. So the real question is the home you've provided for your pet letting it truly live, or is it just barely existing?